Hello, everyone. This is Todd Talks. I am joined today with Tanya DePass, and we are talking about all things D&D. How you doing, Tanya?
Good. How are you?
I am good. I am suffering without coffee.
I'm so sorry.
It's all
I'm
right.
having tea, so we'll suffer together.
There's a little caffeine in tea.
It's
This is tiny bit.
no.
So let's just kind of jump in there. First of all, you are on a show, a D&D live streaming show. What is that show? For those that do not know at
I'm
home.
I'm on Rivals Waterdeep. We are about to close out our third season, and we're lucky enough to get our last show streamed at PAX East over the weekend.
That's very cool. And what character do
Yeah.
you play?
I am the ever grumpy human paladin, Lisa Storio, who always wants a bath and a nap. And much like me, she wants to kind of not talk to anyone at the end of most episodes. She's like, give me a book and a bath, and all of you heathens leave me alone.
Yeah, so that you are the inspiration for this character?
Yeah, because I like to think I'm a good person some days. I don't know. But for the most part, Celeste is that manifestation of if I could actually wield a sword and shield in real life, not to hurt people, but to be helpful, to be a better person, to guard my friends and guard the people that I think have been wronged by society.
What is that the thing that you kind of think is the appeal of a paladin in D&D?
I think so, and I like some of the changes with 5e where you can have kind of a darker backstory. You don't have to be like all goodness and light, because my character's backstory is not all goodness and light. She's actually taken an oath of vengeance, so she is not she's not just like in it to be simply good.
So Oath of Vengeance, but you are playing good at the same time.
Yes, because she is a very specific person or people that she wants to get vengeance on. But overall, she's a good person. She cares a lot about the group she's running with, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully, knock on all the wood that we get a season 4, and we get to explore that a bit more, because she's kind of figured out where to find the person that's wronged her, but we haven't had a chance to do a lot of exploring that way, other than a very kind of traumatic 2-part end to our season 2 for my character.
Do you have advice for playing paladins now? Because it is very different. Like back in the day, it was like you had to be lawful good. And you were even penalized if like you didn't play lawful good, then you would lose levels and all kinds of other weird stuff.
Let's see. I would say now playing a paladin, think about what's going to motivate the paladin. Is this someone who is inherently good? Are they good, but they're fine with the kind of gray areas of things? Do they want to help people, or are they kind of going to be on that path to a darker side and maybe become I can't remember the right word for it, a paladin that loses their way? I keep wanting to say light side, dark side, but wrong game, wrong system. But a paladin that loses their way and becomes more evil than anything else, and like they would,
like an oathbreaker. Yeah,
yes, that's the word. It's early. I don't have my coffee yet. Well, not early for me. It's 2:00 here. I can't even use that excuse.
What is your player advice for in particular for people who are like just now getting into D&D? There's a lot of attention on D&D lately. What's your advice to new players?
My advice to new players is, I would say, 1, have a group that you're safe with. 2, probably start easy, do a pre-gen, get used to the rules, what you have to do for your combat, your things like that, and don't be afraid to explore theater of the mind. Everything doesn't have to be, set in stone. The rule book says this on page 200, whatever, because it's a guidebook. Have fun with it, and above all else, have a session 0. For those who may wonder what I'm talking about, that means sitting down with the GM and everyone else you're playing with, either literally or virtually, and go, okay, these are things that are okay with me. These are things that are not okay with me. Depending on how well you know everyone you're gaming with, just don't be afraid to set boundaries and go, this is okay, this is not okay. And have safety tools. A lot of people know about the X card. Those that don't know about it, it's a card where if something happens at the table and maybe it was something that never came up during your session 0, and if the GM or another player or the scenario brings it up, you can be like, nope, this is not okay. And you can wind it back and go, okay, well, this didn't happen. Like Veil of Darkness, wind it back, whatever you have to do to be safe. And don't be afraid to kind of run with it, explore. And remember, you should have some fun with it. It doesn't have to be rules lawyer. It doesn't have to be, if I don't play this exactly as it is in the rule book, then I'm a failure as a player, because it's all about imagination. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars on dice and minis and maps. You can get a PDF of the player's handbook, get a preset adventure to learn, and maybe I'll learn together with other new players, because sometimes mixing new and old players works great. Sometimes it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. All of us have those stories of joining either maybe an established group or people that know each other well, but you don't know them well, and your play styles don't mesh. And because maybe you joined an incoming game, or you did start together, but there was no session 0, you didn't get to have that sit down about what's okay, what's not okay. And everyone's playstyle is different. I'm in game, my character is rules focused, but she's not afraid to break rules if it's for the good of the group. In real life, I'm much different. So think about where your personality is going to bleed into that character as well, because you want everyone at the table to feel good, to be safe, to enjoy it and want to come back, whether it's a one-shot, whether it's a convention game, whether it's a game you plan to stream or whatever you're doing. You want everyone to be comfortable and have a good time, and not be afraid of difficult topics, but be adults about it.
What sort of difficult topics have you experienced in D&D? Because I know that I think everyone's done a little bit of self-therapy in D&D to some extent. Like, it's almost unavoidable.
Let's see. So there was one session/episode of our show where my character had to dress up in a ball gown, and I'm not very girly. I don't like dresses. Like, put me in jeans and a t-shirt and I'm totally happy. And my personal discomfort bled through a lot to the character, because that would have just had me really, really unhappy and really not fearful, but just very uncomfortable and feeling on edge the whole time. And I'm sure that came through in kind of like how I did that. But other uncomfortable things and things that, a lot of people just don't want to have at the table. A lot of women I've met and that I know have left games, have been very uncomfortable, and content warning, because a lot of people will think, oh, female characters, we're going to throw assault and rape in there, like it's, oh, well, you're a female character, of course you face this. And maybe the person at the table is a victim, maybe they're a survivor, and they don't want that at the table. They don't want that, especially if you don't discuss it first. If you sit down as a group and you're fine with it and you discuss it, how this is going to work out, fine, you're all consenting adults. But there's too many horror stories of GMs throwing things like, unwanted pregnancy, etc. Or you're a female character, you have to be the cleric. So things like that where the GM doesn't talk to the players outside of maybe that first session. And so things like that where it's like, even if I'm not a survivor, maybe that's gonna make someone else at the table uncomfortable. It'll make me uncomfortable, because you don't need that as a mechanic. It's not necessary.
Yeah, I would like to assume that people would always ask beforehand, and I've actually never been in a game session of any type that involved that type of subject matter at all. So I've always been stunned when I hear stories about dungeon masters or game masters just introducing that as plot lines without talking to the group at first, because it's a very serious issue, and that's a very real issue. And I largely play D&D to escape. And you don't know everyone's story at any table in the first place, and it's kind of myopic to pretend like you do. So
It comes up. I actually was on a panel at, wow, it feels like 20 years ago, at PAX Unplugged about that. And I brought that topic up again. And someone came up after the panel and asked about it. And this sounds weird, and I still don't know what to do with this comment, but he tried to allegorize it to Mario and the princess being in a castle and about her being chased. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I need to go. I really was just like, I'm not sure where this is going. Like, because he just could not understand why, like, assault and other things couldn't be a mechanic. And we can talk about it later. We can talk about it now, but I'm sure a lot of people have seen the conversations of race and racism as racism as a mechanic.
Right.
And it's like, I'm not white, for those that can't tell. I'm just light skinned. I experience this daily, every day. I do not want or need it at the table. Like you said, games are an escape. I want to sit there, have a few drinks, be they alcohol, non-alcohol, whatever we're doing, roll some dice with my friends and have a good time. This is about fantasy. It's theater of the mind. It's enjoying myself. As a creative person, it's an outlet. And, I've made a lot of great friends playing D&D and other tabletop games. And I keep seeing conversations where people insist that racism is a needed mechanic as a motivation for a villain. You don't need that. If that's what it tells me, and I'm sorry, I fidget a lot.
No, you're not fidgeting at all.
No, I'm playing with things on my desk. You all just can't see me because I fidget. My hands are not in the shot. There's just been these ongoing conversations I've seen over the last couple of weeks with people, some people saying, oh, well, what else am I going to put in my game? How else can I give them a motivation for being a villain? And to me, that shows that for you, academic or racism in its academic exercise, it's merely a moral failing, not an institutionalized thing that real humans deal with every single day. And if you feel this is your only option to give a character either this background, or like if I say, well, my character is an elf and they're dark brown and they come from, wherever it is I've decided they come from, if you immediately go, well, that humans aren't going to like you, dwarves aren't going to like you, that's fine, but it all depends on how it's implemented in the game, because we're all adults, and if we can't evolve the game, we can't evolve the story. What does that mean for sitting at the table? Just because the book has told us so for so many years doesn't mean we can't modify it, doesn't mean we can take that out of the game. The GM has power over this. The players can say, you know what? I know, like, we're playing elves and dwarves and they normally fight, but let's not do that this time. Maybe they're just evil. Maybe this person maybe they're poor and they resent the wealthy people in the town. There's so many other ways that you can give someone a motivation to be a villain or give a character a backstory. There's much better ways to do this.
Yeah, the elves and dwarves cannot get along for reasons that have nothing to do with race. It could be that the dwarves have all the gold. It could be a lot of different things, and that is the reason for the aminosity. And yeah, it's also a really low hanging fruit kind of trope for a villain. We're like, oh, that's the villain,
right?
And
or like
that makes it also very uninteresting. Just from a story point of view, it's not very interesting. But yeah, when you're living it every day, that's not an escape. And the person who desperately wants to make that like the focus of the campaign typically probably has never experienced it.
And they haven't. And and it's bad enough to have the discourse TM going on again. So it's a great article I shared. And I thought it was a good article. It was about race and racism in D&D and in other RPGs and fantasy settings. I shared it, and some dude decided to write me like a dissertation, and he called out specifically the drow, which, I'm not going to get into it because the drow make me super angry. But he felt compelled to try to have a dialogue that I did not ask for because he's a sociologist. I don't know why some people try to have these conversations, because no matter how many people there are people of color that are queer, that experience oppression, and in this case specifically racism, you will never know what it feels like to actually experience it. What you will have at the table is racism light. You will have what you think racism is, which to a lot of people is, for some people, racism is the extreme side of it. It's white hoods and crosses and everything else, or, fantasy equivalent. But we don't actually need that. We don't need to have that in a setting where we have magic, we have dragons, we have tieflings, we have so many other
where virtually
ways.
anything can happen. Right.
I mean, there's you could go rocks fall, we all die. Oh, my cat is fine. He is wandering around putting in his input somewhere behind me.
So
now he wants food. He wants to be nosy.
So what's your advice for, well, it's not even really an advice issue. Like, how do you encourage a safe table, and also I guess more informed table, because this seems to be a mistake that happens often. And sometimes I've seen people like cite Lord of the Rings, like the relationship between Gimli and Legolas. I'm like, yeah, but that's not really, that's them just really deciding not to get along. Like, why do you feel that you need to personally go down this road? And there's, like, again, like, you can, and even with class issues, I grew up extremely poor. I'm not. Right. I don't need to play a D&D game where a bunch of rich people tell my character I'm garbage or something. Like, that's not something I need to play. So you should definitely, like, you need to talk to your players. Like, talk to them.
Right. For me, a safe table is, we've sat down together. We've come to an agreement with, here are things that are okay as long as we discuss it. Maybe the week before we do the show, or in our case, we're just before we sit down. Hey, I want to do something with a character. Is this okay? Mm-hmm. And then, depending on my reaction, yes, but I feel like we should get consent from the other players because maybe this could be traumatic. Or, here's my short list of absolutely not. And if you do it anyway, then we need to have an unhappy conversation after this episode. Which, knock on wood, I've never had to deal with on Rivals, have had to deal with in past games. And not trying to police a lot of what characters or players can do, in the sense of, oh, well, you can only have a certain background because this fits with my great scheme of this campaign, because anyone who's DM knows your players will throw out half of what you've written in the first 10 minutes. You can have the great plan.
That's the fun.
Right. Your players will destroy whatever great plan it is. So, when I GM, I have some prep because I figure it's just going to go wild. And then, just be open to communication, check in and talk either before each session, after each session with Rivals. We go out after the show and we chat and we talk about it. And if people have to kind of run off because life happens, we've got a Slack where we talk. We all can text each other, call, what have you. And we keep in constant communication. We don't just show up every week like an hour before the show and go, okay, well, what are we doing this week? We talk about it, and we even have callbacks to previous sessions, because having that cohesiveness, I guess, of we're all enjoying this is what we want. And Sharif has been great this season, making sure that what he wants to do as a GM doesn't take away from what we're doing as players, what we want to do as players. I've been in other games where the GM is kind of like, well, I'm God, I can do what I want, screw you and your plot hook.
Right.
And especially if it's a long running campaign. I was in a campaign of 3.5 for about 2.5 years, every weekend, every other weekend, going to friend's house and playing several hours, even to the point where we'd sleep over because we'd finish playing at 2 or 3 in the morning. And we chatted, we talked on Facebook, we checked in with, is this okay? How's your character doing? And when my character died in that campaign, seeing if I was okay, because you can get very attached to your characters because you've put yourself in that character. And also, and people don't like to talk about this, knowing when it's okay to walk off from a game. If you're not enjoying it, if you feel unsafe, if you're unhappy with what a GM is doing, then you have every right to walk away from that table. Now, obviously, if you're on a contracted show, that's a little different, but
Yeah.
you can't just be like, screw you guys, I'm out. But if you are walking that line, or if you get anxious about the show or what have you, you have to do what's best for you, and it'll hurt, it'll suck, you may lose friends, but no one, I've seen a lot of people just go through a lot to not lose that group, because it's so hard sometimes for people to find a group to play with that they can trust, but one person with the GM, another player, can make it unbearable. And if you all can't communicate, because I've seen so many games just fall apart, or hear stories of, well, this one guy makes me uncomfortable, because sadly it's usually a guy, but I don't know, because they're all friends and I joined this game like 2 sessions in. I don't want to be the troublemaker. Be the troublemaker. It's okay.
Yeah. And it's okay to get burnt out.
Oh my God, yes.
That's something I was in a game for 2 years. I'm like, I just don't want, I need to not do this for a while. Yeah, but it's a real fear. You have a fear of losing your friends over it, just because you don't want to play sometimes.
Yeah, so I actually did lose some friends over a game. It was stupid. It was incredibly stupid. But we were playing an online game. It was all text. We weren't even doing chat. Early days of Roll20. And I cannot just sit and stare at a computer, because we were doing text. It wasn't like I had to be on a mic and constantly just focused on the game. So there was one session where I was kind of just fiddling around in a game on the side until it was my turn. The GM got super upset with me, sent me a very long email. She was super upset and felt I was disrespecting her time. And it wasn't like, oh, you've got to wait 10 minutes on me to respond or do whatever. But she just felt like I was disrespecting her time. But the way in which she communicated, because there's a lot of swearing, etc. And I was like, well, clearly you don't like what I'm doing. I'm not slowing down the game or anything else. If this is such an issue, my character can leave the game. Because I was just giving her an out. And then apparently not responding in the same amount of detail and vitriol. Because I was like, well, I could respond in kind, but what good is that? She just unfriended me. Everything else, we don't talk anymore, which is sad, because I was enjoying the game, but I also, it's not like it was a stream game. It's not like how we're here chatting. This was strictly text. I just had to type in chat, but apparently me multitasking was a thing. So even things like that should be discussed in your session 0, whether or not you're streaming it, just sitting at a table, because some GMs don't want people to have their phones out. They don't want you to do anything. And, and that, for me, that's a bit more of when you have your book out, you're not using D&D Beyond, you're not using your phone. Because some people use their phone, like Brandon Wren uses his phone for D&D Beyond. I've got a tablet out. So we're not distracted. We're actually using the tools to play the game.
Right. Do you think ultimately all these issues are people just not listening? And this is something that I try to kindly remind people. If someone tells you they're offended by something, you should probably just listen and try that first, rather than demanding an explanation for that offense. It seems like people always want you to explain why you are offended and justify it before just saying, okay, I'll back off.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I'm sorry you were offended. Or what I've seen too is a real apology is really hard, because there's that defense mechanism of, what, I didn't do anything wrong. There's just a lot of, instead of hearing the person is hurt, instead of hearing that something is not okay, that very human reaction of wanting to not be the wrong party kicks in. And I think in those moments, it's hard to have those discussions, because a lot of times when things happen, if they happen in game, you should try to talk about it immediately or as soon as you can, and not wait and wait and wait. Because some friends had a situation where things were going on in the game, no one spoke up, and then it got to a point where it blew up, and then it turned to, well, why didn't you say anything? And it's like, well, I didn't know how you'd react. Well, now the game is over and no one wants to talk to anybody. And I think that's really important when you think about who you're going to play with, because you as the GM or however your group is composed, you should know or try to see how well people will collaborate, because at the end of the day, you're still doing collaborative storytelling. And feelings get intense. It's very easy to hurt someone unintentionally. Hopefully no one's doing this intentionally. But I think listening and saying, okay, I've heard what you said. I'm really sorry. Can I have a day to think about it, and can we talk later, is more effective than the knee-jerk response that a lot of people will often give.
That's good advice. So what are your Dungeon Master tips in terms? I know that was strange changing of gears, super heavy topic.
No, it's just like I'm laughing because I feel like I'm the worst GM ever.
You think you're the worst? What you as a Dungeon Master or a Game Master? What works for you? Like, what is your process for starting a game?
So, well, at least in the case of Rivals, I literally like messaged to the three other people on the show, like, hey, there's a chance to do a D&D show. Do you trust me? And do you want to do this? And they were like, okay. And Brandon and Sharif had not ever played D&D. And but in other cases, I think about the people that I can collaborate with well. I rarely play games with strangers. I've gone to Gen Con twice, and I've never played a game there because strangers, and you never know what you're going to get at a convention game. But in terms of something where it's going to be an ongoing thing, even a one-shot, who is it that I know or maybe that I don't know, but I like what they have to say about tabletop? And I try to be considerate of people's time, their energy, and, when possible, what is it that we're trying to do? Are we just going to have fun? Do we not care about the rules? Are we going more narrative? Mm-hmm. Are we going to be combat focused? Like, what is it that the group wants to get out of it? Are we going to do a month? Are we going to do a year? Trying to think of all that up front as I can. And then approaching people like, hey, I really would like to play D&D. I'd like to play Dungeon World. I'd like to play Dragon Age, something. And I like you. I would like to spend time and hang out. Is this something you're interested in? Do you have time for it? Because that's the biggest thing. And then if they do, kind of get folks together either on a Slack or a Discord chat and go, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Does this sound good to you? What kind of character do you want to play if you're not familiar? Look, here's pre-gens. You don't even have to go through all the character creation. And just kind of go from there. And whether it's casual, like twice a month, whether it's a show that I'm running when I was doing Star Trek, or the show that I'm on, just really thinking about everyone's personality and how we kind of fit and flow together. And then, do some prep. So full disclosure, I'm the laziest GM ever. Like 2 hours maybe before Star Trek, I would be writing notes, and it'd be a very loose outline. And then it's like, I hope this works. I hope we can at least get us half as far as I planned. Let's see what happens. And then just kind of see how
it's always half of what you plan. It doesn't matter what I write. The simplest thing will become, only half.
Well, and even with pre-written modules, so I ran a charity game of Dragon Age, and I picked the Dalish Curse. And there's a part of it where you have to get out of the town, but you have to get an artifact from this NPC elf. I finally had to threaten them all with a TPK to get them out of this house. You have to leave. Either take the things by force, take the elf with you, or leave her here and hope she's still there. But the town is going to break in and kill all of you.
Yeah.
We have to get out of this house.
Yeah, there are those moments. But
just like, why?
that's like, It's a double-edged sword. It is great to see your players just go off on a tangent and just interact and interact and interact. But you are also like, okay, something has to happen though.
Right? Like, why are we having this argument with this NPC? And like, I know because I've got my virtual GM screen that like, things are going to happen with her, but you can't sit here and spend 30 minutes arguing with her when we've got 3 hours for this stream.
Right.
I was just like,
that's another consideration when you're streaming. You have a limited amount of time to provide a certain level of story to your audiences, as well as have fun at the same time.
Yeah, because the Stream of Many Eyes last year, when our show premiered, we had a finite amount of time and a puzzle to solve.
Yeah,
that was some of the most stressful gaming. Because and we also didn't know the consequences if we didn't solve the puzzle. So we found out later poor Elisa was running back and forth like with a contingency plan of if we didn't solve this puzzle.
Oh wow. Yeah,
but I mean overall is like have a plan, have an idea of kind of like, okay, we know our session is 2 to 3 hours. Ideally I'd like it if we got here, but I'm okay if we get to here. And if we don't even get to there, make a note of it, see what the players get stuck on. And not in a bad way, but like, oh, they really like engaging with someone they met in a tavern, on the street, some character. Maybe they're a totally minor character you hadn't thought of, but for whatever reason, the party's really engaged with them. Give them more to do. Beef up that character. And don't beef up the character just to kill them. Don't let them get attached just to kill the character that's mean. But observe your players, and not in a creepy way. Observe them and see like what is they like to do. Is that sounded creepy the second I said it. I was like, oh my god, that sounds so bad the second I said it.
Yeah.
But observe kind of like and make sure people get a chance to do something, and not in the Rockstar Diva way, but is everyone kind of getting a chance to do anything? Is the story moving? Is the story stagnating? Like, is this thing that you've put out there, if it's not a pre-gen, is this holding the player's interest? Or are they just wandering off in the woods doing whatever? That means you need to tweak what you're doing. What is it that you want to do with these stories? And and not like you have to plan out start to finish, because you never know where the game's going to go, but have kind of an idea of roughly your beginning, middle, and possible endings. And also talk about character death, because not everyone plans for character death and not everyone wants character death. So
it is very hard to deal with character death, and sometimes it is very necessary, because if you play a D&D game and you don't think you can die, that can be extremely limiting as well. Like things don't feel as real for me sometimes.
And having had a character I spent over 2.5 years on die, I cried. I'm not gonna lie, I cried about that character.
Oh no!
Yes.
And then you start thinking about your next character.
I think I even had one, like our DM at the time may have had us even have 2 characters because it's been a while since we played. But it was just like it was a stupid thing, but it was a roll of the dice. It was literally like, even with my modifiers being this high level character, well, he was dragon food. Oh well.
Yeah, I had a character. He fell from a great height.
Yeah,
and it was a very specific height, and there was nothing that could be done.
Yeah, so. You just look down at the cliff. You're like, well, I mean, there's limits. I mean, I'm a paladin. I'm pretty strong. I've got a high AC, but a fall off a cliff is probably going to kill Sleeth. Let's just be real. Not that I plan to jump off a cliff.
And they've got those damage rules per feet. So like, I didn't think the character was going to fall, and it was a choice by the other players to attack the thing that had grabbed him, and they killed it, and consequently killed him as well. I'm like, if I just like shove a haystack underneath him, that's not. Yeah, like I can't, like, like that doesn't feel like a real game. If like I just suddenly like put padding under him for no reason, that kind of, it just doesn't feel it doesn't it loses its teeth.
Yeah, I mean it's
important.
It's yeah, it's not a video game as much as I love video games. And I think making your players think about consequences, I personally don't mind having character death. Because I think not having it, and this is my personal preference, can make some people reckless. They go, well, my character can't die. I'm gonna do whatever I want. It's like, oh no, that's not how this works. If you're a level 5 fighter and you go off and fight like something twice your level, twice your height, you're probably gonna die.
Or you say things role playing wise that would never fly. Like when you like if you mouth off to the king and it's not the kind of king that would like take that well, or you like provoke a red dragon. Yeah. At some point you kind of paint you kind of put the DM in a hard situation of like, well, I have to kind of kill you now. Like I can't find a way. Like you're literally writing checks that your PC cannot cash. So we do have a question from chat. Question: Have you either of you played older editions of D&D? What in fifth edition has most impressed you, be it mechanical, lore, tone, or whatever?
I think mechanics and lore, and I'm just gonna be upfront. So we know Greg Tito, and Greg had me on Dragon Talk, and we talked a bit about my fall from D&D and role playing because of terrible humans, both on the internet and real life. And we were talking about D&D, and he's like, what would it take to get you back, everything else. And I'd not seen any of the 5th edition books at that time. And he was, later he was like, hey, check it out. Let me know what you think. And I saw that the iconic human was a black woman, a dark-skinned warrior black woman who's actually in proper armor. And for me, that was a turning point, because most D&D stuff, most fantasy stuff is very much blonde, blue-eyed,
European,
European-centric. And I was like, hold on. I get to be the iconic human. Sold. Here, take all my money. And it just seemed like it was just like, I hadn't bought books since 3.5. I hadn't played since 3.5. And it was like finally I could see myself reflected in the lore. And the mechanics seemed to be a bit, I don't want to say easier, because I know some people feel like, oh, it's really dumbed down, it's changed so much. But I don't have to do like hard math just to play my character.
Yeah.
And with D&D Beyond, because that's what we use on our show, when we level, we do whatever, I have an easy reference. I can roll dice, I can do whatever, and it's very simple. It's laid out. I don't have to, it's not going to take me like 5 minutes to figure out what my character did, how much damage I did, because that's something I think puts a lot of people off initially of D&D, at least, where they feel like they need an advanced math degree to make their character, but also to play. And, the other GM thing that I didn't talk about is I would say not play a magic user for your very first character. Although we know that Brandon ignored this advice because he's a warlock. I still love him. Because there's just a lot of extra. Well, I mean, you have to keep track of your spells, your spell slots, what damage you can do, what to roll.
Explaining it to a new player. You have, all right, these are the spells you know. These are here's the second level spell that you know. Here are the number that you know of those second level spells. You know 3 level 2 spells, and this is how many slots you have at level 2. Like, it's just like the worst. It's the worst thing to explain sometimes.
And then it's like, when did you last sleep? Do you have mana? How much do you have? Do you know that if you throw a fireball in this inn, you'll kill all of us?
Yeah. Fireball is always a rough learn for everyone involved.
Magic missile. Magic missile.
Magic missile is a good safe one. It's like the one that always hits.
It does. It usually hits everyone and everything. But that's, for me, it's the tone, it's the lore. I find it easier to digest and a lot easier to go to someone. A friend of mine, Andy, has never played D&D. and handed him a player's handbook, and he wasn't put off by like the over complexity. The tables were simple, and I think it's more welcoming to newer players and simplifies for experienced players.
Yeah, and I've been I grew up in the middle of nowhere, so I had nothing other than D&D to mess around with and read since I was a little kid. And it is, I wouldn't say it was simple either. I think it's streamlined and focused on what kind of makes the game great. And also, I love that it's baked in that you can ignore these rules and you can do things, you can flavor things, and they constantly remind you throughout. This is your game. This is your process of storytelling. So we have all these rules. You don't have to do this. You can throw some of these ideas out. And again, the art, yes, the representation was huge to see that made different types of characters. And I think that's a good reminder for anyone who's running a game that you don't have to have this classic European adventure either. Like you can explore a lot of different things and a lot of different perspectives. I think 5th edition was the first one that really kind of opened that up. So that's what my favorite things were.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, especially people of color, everything else, even just seeing the artwork, even if you played the game before, if you never played the game, seeing yourself reflected is great. And Greg may yell at me later, but I would also like to see more of that, like at D&D, at Wizards, to see more people of color there, because while it's cool and the inclusion is great and having our shows great and other shows people of color, the people making the game should also be just as diverse.
Right. What do you think? Have you ever thought about being a game designer? Have you dabbled in it?
Yes, I've actually done some writing for Green Ronin and for Paizo. And because I'm entirely petty, my two friends in the chat will laugh at me. I'm a big Dragon Age nerd, and the book that recently came out did not have one of the major characters from 2. I actually wrote up the stats for Fenris because he wasn't in the book, and since I'd written for Green Ronin, it was actually pretty easy. And I just put it out there, and then Green Ronin shared it. So I mean, I conceptually I know. At least I know how Paizo likes stuff, and now Green Ronin likes stuff. I would like to do some stuff for Wizards, or at least consult, because I've D&D has been part of my life off and on for so long. I mean, I'm a little bit older than D&D, and I think having people of color, there's plenty of queer folks at D&D already working, it would help because you would have people who know the culture, know the game, in giving input, and maybe we could get adventures that maybe just have just all people of color in the book. It's a new setting, it's what have you, and not have to do outreach, not have to get consultants because you don't have any people in your studio. So I would love to do it. It's just I get a little intimidated on the system side of it, writing systems, but the lore, the settings, the characters, just throw me at it. I'm really happy to do it.
So you're a giant Dragon Age nerd, huh? So yeah, it just occurred to me I need to rock that. I need to rock that Solus cosplay. Shave my beard.
No, don't do it. No. I probably wouldn't recognize you, to be honest.
Without the beard?
I don't know. I don't know if you know Dr. B overtake this, but he shaved. He wasn't in his usual vest and bow tie. He walked past me twice at a convention. I didn't even recognize him.
Yeah, the beard is relatively new. I didn't grow it until 2 years ago, but most of my life I've shaved my head. But then I was told when I was at NBC, we need to talk about your haircut because I would have mohawks or a shaved head. Yeah, so there were conversations about my appearance.
Oh no. Gee, I don't know what that's like, having dreadlocks at all.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I'm terrible. You're never gonna let me come back again.
Yeah, no, that's it. I hope you enjoyed your time on the show.
Well, we're done here. Goodbye.
What keeps bringing you back to D&D D&D? Why do you love playing it?
Storytelling, because I've got a lot of words that don't get to get out very often. And I enjoy creating. I enjoy theater of the mind. I enjoy not just storytelling and coming up with characters and different scenarios, but the ways in which this character that I've conceived of and brought to life, not just on a character sheet, not just, in my mind, but at a certain point, and this may sound weird, but people who role play a lot will get this, that character is very real. It's very much a person to you, and not in a weird way, like I don't talk to the character.
Yeah.
But that is a living extension of you in many ways. And getting that creativity, having that outlet for it. And I get to play D&D every week with my friends in front of a lot of people. And for nerdy younger me, that's a dream come true. I was one of those people that had to deal with my mom thinking D&D was satanic, and I get to hang out with a bunch of other black and brown folks every week, rolling dice and telling our story, and that's just so powerful. And then getting to go to conventions and talking to people and seeing folks finally feel empowered because they see someone like them, because we didn't set out to be like a role model or a look at us, we're so diverse.
Right.
But it means so much to a person of color, to another woman, to another queer person, to see people like them sitting at a table every week and just enjoying the game. We're not, like, no one put us out as like, look at us, Wizards is so great, we have the show of brown people. No, we're just showing that everyone can play, everyone's welcome. And whether you never touched dice before that show or you've been playing since first edition, that there's a place for you, and we're going to make a place for you. And not like we're these arbiters of diversity, but we also have that placed on us whether or not we agree to it, because
whether you want it or not. Yeah.
Right, because they're going to see this one show with all people of color, and if we fail, it's a failure for everyone else, whether or not we like that, whether or not we agree to it. But we're doing great. People love us. We were getting fan art, no fanfic, like from the very first episode of Stream Many Eyes. Like Brandon and I were sitting in the airport, and someone drew fan art of our very first episode, and I almost cried in the airport because I never thought that would happen, and it means a lot to people. So, yes, so do I, Obo Crazy. So, Greg, if you're watching, we want another season. I have no shame.
Call it out. Call it out right now. Get it.
Look, I have no shame. None at all. This is how I've gotten where I am in life.
Yeah, and this isn't an issue like I've ever had to deal with my entire life, but I will never forget. I went to Dragon Con for the first time in Atlanta, and Black Panther had just been announced. Like the trailer had just dropped, and lots of like Black Panther cosplay and Miles Morales cosplay. And when you see an 8-year-old girl get excited for a character that looks like them, it's very affecting. Where having gone to cons for like 15 years now, that wasn't something you got to see a lot of diversity in, like cosplay, for example, or the topics that were even talked about.
Yeah, I was just to C2E2, our local convention, and there were so many Miles Moraleses and Spider-Gwens walking around. Two of our castmates were different spiders, versions of Miles. Carlos and Serena were both versions of Miles Morales. And it's just so heartening to see these kids have not, I don't want to say heroes, but to have characters that look like them. To see
from day one, like from day one, from being like a little kid, and you see that's your experience. That's insane. I mean, that's a big deal.
It is. And I grew up like, I may have seen one or two Black Barbies. We didn't get to see anyone except Sulu and Uhura. The Jeffersons was there, but the mom was a maid. And no, that's not the Jeffersons. I'm thinking of the wrong show. Good Times.
Those good times.
Those were the characters that we got. And it wasn't until Uhura was like an officer on a ship. It wasn't a maid, it wasn't a prostitute or anything. It was a strong Black woman who didn't leave the show. and who stayed there and was really important and on the bridge. And I don't think a lot of people now that, not spoiled for choice, because we still get people who push back on diversity, but to be a little kid or a teenager now and have that's so important.
So, oh no, we have 9 minutes left. What?
Oh dear.
What was your single favorite D&D experience that you've had so far? Like in-game or related to D&D? I know this is a giant overarching question, but like it's okay to geek out because we all do this to each other. We're like, this one time my character did this thing.
Let's see, depending on time and if we get any more questions. So, excuse me, 2 episodes ago.
Chat, feel free to ask questions. It's okay.
So 2 episodes ago, we were stuck in the mind in a trap because Sharif loves puzzles, and we finally went up against something that was undead, and I could actually get all my bonuses in as a paladin. Rolling 5d8s against this giant creature and doing ridiculous damage made me so happy. And then I had a moment of, but it wasn't real. This was a puzzle. I kind of hate all of you right now. I don't actually hate you, but I just got 3 major kills and it wasn't real. But in the moment, it was awesome. Because it was just like, what? Oh, okay. Poor Celeste was just, like, imagine like dejected Charlie Brown walk away once we get out of the trap. But so in the moment, it was amazing.
So it was an
illusion / trick of the mind, because it was happening, but it wasn't really happening. So basically,
that's so mean.
I know, right? Like it was just like, wow. Lauren's like, but it was real.
It's like playing D&D within D&D.
Right? It was very meta. It was very meta.
Why do I anything then?
Right? And the other one, I went to BlurredCon last year, and, you know, I still get a little weirded out when people recognize me. I'm not used to it at all.
It's always a freaky thing, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, we were talking about this before the show. I'm very much an introvert, believe it or not, even though I do this stuff. Someone screamed when they saw me, and it was a happy scream, but it still kind of freaked me out. 1, because someone screamed.
Yeah.
But 2, but they were happy because they told me how much the show meant to them. And they didn't know I was going to be there, or maybe they didn't expect to see me just walking around for whatever reason. But they were just so happy, and they were talking about how seeing a show with people like them meant so much. And it was just really heartening. And granted, it still scared the bejesus out of me because I wasn't ready for a scream. But it was just very heartening. And to know that what we were doing by just sitting at a table every week rolling dice meant a lot to them. And there's one other thing, and I can link folks to it. Someone who was at Gen Con last year wrote me a very beautiful, heartfelt letter about seeing someone like them on panels, because I wasn't just on diversity panels. I wasn't there just talking about, oh, I'm brown in tabletop and it sucks. We were talking about other issues.
Right.
And they were like, seeing someone like me at the table and not just in the audience is giving me hope. And I did cry when I got that. And the fact that they found me and we talked and they let me share that letter meant the world to me, because they could have not said anything. They could have just like had those feelings and not shared. And some days when it's really hard and the internet's terrible and people are terrible, getting something like that can make a real difference, whether or not people realize it. Because I think we forget that sometimes people on the shows you watch are actual people.
Yeah. Or a lot of the time.
99% of the time.
I also forget, like, I'm not ready for people's kindness in person. That always.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's harder sometimes.
It is.
When someone comes up to you and has nice things to say and you've never met them before. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's a good reminder of you have a presence whether or not you realize it. And I downplay that a lot because I'm just uncomfortable with attention because I'm a big awkward turtle. But it's a good reminder. I'm an awkward turtle. I am. Like if people yell out or they want to hug me or say hi, and it's like I have to remember to be gracious and grateful.
Yeah.
But it is harder sometimes, I think, or it's a good reminder to be humble, because this is an opportunity and a privilege that a lot of people don't have.
And I think we've all experienced someone we've looked up to, and sometimes they have fallen from those expectations, whether they were rude or dismissive. I've even encountered that. There was like someone who I looked up to like for my entire career, and they were like over it, like very over it. And you know, that's everyone's right. Like everyone's a person. You're allowed to be completely over it, but it is like it's definitely disenchanting. Especially like and for you there's so much more pressure to just be this positive influence on everyone in D&D.
But anyone who ever follows me on Twitter, if you follow me after the show, just know that I can be cheerful, I can be positive, but I can't do the fake cheerfulness.
No.
There's as much sugar as salt on my timeline.
Yeah. So you know. Yes, there is. It's good salt though. It's good salt.
Yeah, there was salt this morning about but because we talked about diversity in games and what I do as a nonprofit I run called I Need Diverse Games, and someone replied to it, but we need good games. And I was like, oh, I have time for
They are not
today.
mutually exclusive.
Exactly. And I was like, wow. So it's 9. I've had some coffee. Let me just have a moment on Twitter before I start cleaning.
Let me just unpack this for you for a second. Yeah.
People.
Kill them with kindness, I guess.
I mean, I try to be a good person, and because I'm a human, I sometimes fail.
Right.
And I think that that's a good thing to remember, maybe to close on, that for all the people you look up to, all the people you admire, you have to remember that they are a person. They get tired, especially when we do these conventions and other things, is that, yes, I love it when people come up and talk to me, and I usually have way more energy at conventions. But if you catch somebody at 6 a.m. on Twitter, you may not get the best part of them.
Yeah.
So
that is a good note. And I always remember the person you're talking to may also be having a hard day.
Yes.
So give everyone a break. Well, Tanya, thank you so much. We will absolutely have you back again on Todd Talks. I would love to talk more about all things D&D and beyond. Oh God, I made a pun. I'm so ashamed. That's it, everyone. That's the end of it. Thank you again. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm glad we made this happen. And anytime you want me to come back, just let me know.
I would love that. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching the show. Have a great day.